The Revolutionary War produced many heroes, and not all of them were American. We're going to talk about one of them who came from France as a teenager on this week's episode of the State of Greater Western New York Report, which as always is brought to you by...
Each week, our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard. The Niagara Falls Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa.
Hi there, and welcome everyone to this week's edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Boy, we've got a good show for you today. It's going back in history, but it's going to focus on Western New York. In fact, it's so good, it's going to be done in two parts. So those of you who are live, if you want to stick around for the taping of the second part, you're going to be welcome to do that. Well, with us today is Julien Icher. He is the president and founder of Lafayette Trail, and he has been embarking on a mission over the last several years of placing markers that indicate where General Lafayette made his tour in 1824 and 1825. And it's that latter year when Lafayette came through Western New York. Well, Julien, welcome to today's show, and tell us first a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in this particular subject.
Well, hello, Chris. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for having me. Thanks for your interest in Lafayette and you know what this man represents and the legacy you left in your beautiful country that I'm proud to call a home. I've been here several years now. I've been following a passion of mine, which has been to get to know the American country that I heard about, that I read about when I was a kid in France. And I do it through exploring the legacy of Lafayette, a French hero, somebody that was born in my country, came here, answered the call of freedom when the rebels here in this country tried to achieve independence. And he's left an amazing legacy in your country. And to me, as a Frenchman, I am attracted by finding out what that legacy is and how it has survived and how it has evolved throughout history. So it's been my quest over the past few years to try to find evidence of that legacy. And I do it focusing primarily on, as you mentioned, the return visit he made 50 years after the American Revolution in 1824 and 1825. So I'm a French native as well, and I admire your country in so many ways.
Well, let's start with reminding people who Lafayette was. Now, we all learned about him in elementary school, grade school, high school, when we took our history classes, but we may have forgotten a little bit about him. So, Julien, can you just give us a little bit about Lafayette's background and maybe what brought him to America?
Well, Lafayette was a young aristocrat in France. You know, he, as a teenager, he was fueled with a desire to change the world. He had a lot of family money available for him as well. And this is a man, if you wish, that for a variety of circumstances that demand certain explanation, Lafayette was in a position at a very young age, because of the passing of both of his parents at a very young age, to basically place his family money, which he inherited, in whatever cause he wanted. So the appeal of the fight in North America got to his ears when he was very young, in 1775, basically as early as that. This is a man that very early in his life was exposed to the ideals of the Western Enlightenment, and he really had a connection with what the rebels were trying to accomplish here, which is not just to establish a country, break away from Great Britain, but to really try to form a society later on governed by a government grounded in enlightened principles. And so Lafayette answered that call. He really believed in the project that the rebels here were carrying. And so at age 19 in 1777, he, with his own money, fitted out his own vessel, and he came over to the shores of North America, these United States, try to help in any way he could, volunteering his services to make sure that the country here would achieve independence from Great Britain and could really become the beacon that it has, the point of focus, the city on the hill, all of those things. So Lafayette believed in that. He really believed that the U.S. had a unique role to play on Earth to increase the human condition. And I think he was equipped with a philosophical purpose to military action, and he brought it here. And I think he left a mark in so many ways in this country that people have yet to forget what he did.
Now he came here, he went back, he lobbied for America and France, and then he came back again. What were some of the battles that he participated in, and what was his role in those battles? What was his significance in
Uh,
some of those victorious battles?
I think the most famous one that has really enshrined his, I would say, his role or maybe solidified an affection rather in the hearts of the American people is the Battle of Brandywine, September the 11th, 1777, where he was injured in the leg. Because it really is here at that moment that Americans noticed that he was not just saying things. He really meant everything he said. In fact, he was willing to bleed for it. So that was really a demonstration by blood of his commitment, not being from North America. I think Americans welcomed that test of loyalty and really uh, were happy to find out that Lafayette meant what he was saying. There are a variety of different ones. You can mention also Battle of Monmouth, Battle of Baron Hill in 1778. You can mention obviously Newport also in August of 1778. You can mention Yorktown. That's probably one of the famous ones as well. The Siege of Yorktown in October of 1781. That leads de facto to the end of the American Revolution, where Lafayette was one of Washington's division commanders. So he has contributed in so many ways to pivotal battles, but I think the fact that he got injured really solidified his status among Americans.
Now,
To me,
the interesting thing about Yorktown is, as you said, he was given a unit to be in charge of, which was highly unusual for foreign mercenaries who came in to the Revolutionary War. And at first, Washington denied him the ability to lead troops. This was when he first came in 1776, 1777. Sorry. But there was this relationship between Washington and Lafayette, this bond that was really strong. Can you comment on that and maybe what we saw a result of it? How do we know today how strong that relationship was?
right. Well, first of all, I just like to say you mentioned mercenaries. I mean, Lafayette was not a mercenary, right? He fought with the Americans. So, in fact, he swore an oath of allegiance to the United States in 1778 as well. The relationship with George Washington is an interesting one because you've heard so many things about, oh, this is the father he never had, and Washington, this is the son he never had. These two men never, these two men really bonded. There's no question about it. It will be a very significant friendship for at the national level until George Washington dies in 1799. They've discussed so many things together. Lafayette brought up the subject of slavery in the United States to Washington in the 1780s. Lafayette, when he made a third visit to the U.S. in 1784, he went to see George Washington again. He bid farewell to him in Annapolis, Maryland at that time as well in 1784. And it's just something, it's one of those themes that has really gotten a lot of attention because it's such a beautiful thing to see the displays of affection and how the country has remembered this beautiful friendship between the two men. If you think about the tour in general, 50 years after the American Revolution, when Lafayette goes back to the country embodying the spirit of the American Revolution, the country is going to go ballistic and really go all out on the celebration of the friendship of George Washington, because at a time when a new generation of Americans needs to be told and reminded the spirit of the American Revolution that led to victory in the first place, that we don't want this to go away anytime soon, the friendship between Washington and Lafayette will be used all over the country to solidify a feeling uniquely American that indeed the best days of this country have yet to come. And Lafayette is here to remind you of all of that. This is not an American experiment that is going to die anytime soon. Those of you that are doubting it, please be reassured. that you live in a great country with a revolutionary form of government, revolutionary institutions, and really to remind the connection with George Washington was a way to solidify those Republican foundations in the country. So it is a personal friendship that is extremely significant for decades and way longer, much longer after Washington died in 1799.
So Lafayette was very much appreciated during the Revolutionary War and after, immediately after. But it goes further. He's invited back to tour America in advance of the 50th anniversary of the Revolutionary War, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. He's bringing people with him. He brought his son, as well as others. And what was the name of his son?
George Washington. So George Washington. Yes.
Yeah, so that's
So
how.
that
There you go. I mean, that's evidence of the really strong evidence of this bond. Well, tell us a little bit about this tour, maybe how it started and where broadly Lafayette came to visit. We'll show a graphic when you get to the actual full map of the United States at that time that shows where Lafayette visited. So tell us how it all started.
the tour itself, well, first of all, the connection with the son, George Washington Lafayette. I'd like to mention real quick that during the French Revolution, George Washington Lafayette's son, was actually sent to the United States for his personal safety. So there's a long-lasting connection here as well to mention. As far as the tour goes, it's really an important moment in American history that I think the historiography has probably for the most part overlooked. The reason for that is because the United States, since the American Revolution, rather, has gone through tumultuous periods. You've had of course, the European wars, Napoleonic Wars, the French Revolution before that, that has really wreaked havoc across the continent. But those European divisions, this European conflict, really carries over to the North American continent and creates divisions between the Hamiltonians and the Jeffersonians. So the country between the 1780s and the 1820s is going through a ton of changes. I mean, you can talk about, of course, the Jefferson presidency, the embargo. You can talk about the War of 1812 and how the country is not financially prepared with no fiscal agent to undergo a major war effort again with Great Britain. You can talk about the conversations about the tariffs and the protectionism movement that is nascent after that War of 1812. You can talk about a financial panic in 1819, the Missouri Compromise over the divisions about slavery in 1820, the Greek Revolution, the South American Republican movement. All of these things are all into play, and they are all shaken out in the 1820s, just about the time when Lafayette comes back to the U.S. So he is invited by the Congress of the United States. President Monroe sends the official letter of invitation after Congress validated the invitation, and it's going to be really an anniversary of the country, right? You've got so many different divisional forces that have eroded the feeling of national unity for so long that here is this man, Lafayette. He was so young during the American Revolution that when he comes back in 1824, 1825, he's 67, 68 years old. And most of the founding generation is beyond that age. Many of them have died like George Washington. Others are just about to die like Thomas Jefferson or John Adams. And I think it's really very important to emphasize that Lafayette's youth during the American Revolution comes back decades later to help the country to talk about the American Revolution. And all these new states that have really sprung into existence out west, and I say out west, I mean the states that are closer to the Mississippi River, right? So these new states, Tennessee since the American Revolution, Kentucky, Illinois, Ohio, Missouri, you have them on the map now, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, all of these states, they are looking for a direct and permanent connection to the American Revolution. They're looking for a symbol, for a direct embodiment of that spirit. And Lafayette is that person. He is going to travel to every state in the country for a trip that lasted 13 months. And he's going to go visit every country and bring them into the American Revolution fabric officially. He's going to leave a mark in each of these states, to the point that many of them are going to decide to leave name towns after him, because when Lafayette goes from their state, when he leaves, they don't want this connection to the American Revolution to go away. So what they're doing is they're going to name towns after him in order to make that connection permanent. And this is going to be a theme that you will see throughout the country. In fact, decades later, when California joins the Union, they also have now a city called Lafayette, California, to my point that newer states are using Lafayette's name to show that they're just as American as anybody else on the East Coast. That's a really important theme that talks about how the Americanness is spreading at the same level across the American continent, the North American continent in these United States, and Lafayette is at the center of that fabric.
All right. Well, Julien, stick with us. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the part of the tour that came through Western New York. We'll be right back.
Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. 50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York. Discover the secrets in your own backyard. Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com.
Well, welcome back to the State of Greater Western New York Report. I'm Chris Carosa. With us today is Julien Icher. He is the president and founder of Lehigh Valley Trail, Inc., who has been placing markers throughout the United States signifying where Lafayette took his tour in 1824 and 1825. It's 1825 that we're really most concerned about right now. That is when Lafayette came through the Greater Western New York region. If we go back to the map here, we'll blow it up. Now, by the way, all these numbers are where the markers actually exist. The blue dots or clusters with the numbers on it will explode it into the Western New York area, and you can see that there are 7 dots, 3 here, we can cover that separately, that represent markers that are being used or being shown for the, that tells you where Lafayette's going. We'll put a sample marker up there. There's the one that was recently put up in Mendon. So, Julien, tell us about the actual tour now in terms of where Lafayette was coming from. Where did he come from when he entered the Greater Western New York region, and what was the reception that he saw when he came to Western New York?
Well, the tour lasted 13 months. He started in New York City, August the 15th, 1824. First, he went up to New England. Then he started back from Boston, from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, back down south to the nation's capital, where he would spend the winter. And it's really after the winter, after the celebrations of George Washington's birthday, to our point about Washington's legacy, that he started this journey across the United States, the southern United States, the southwestern United States, and then up the Mississippi River to the states that are born out of the Northwest Territory and the most recent state of Missouri. So that's really when he was completing this entire, we call it Western tour, that he came back to New York State, and he entered in Chautauqua County, New York, June the 4th, 1825, from Erie, Pennsylvania. So basically, you have the map on here. He went through Portland. We're talking like an overnight trip, as I said, between the 3rd and the 4th. So you can say either late into the night or very, very early in the morning. He was in Fredonia, New York on June the 4th, 1825. We actually unveiled the marker there just very recently, as you pointed out. So following the trail from Fredonia, there were honors that were given to him there. He went all the way to Dunkirk, a nearby community of Dunkirk, We're going to have a marker there in the future as well. He got on a boat there, the Superior, that's the name of the steamer. And the boat took him to Buffalo on June the 4th, 1825. So in Buffalo, he spent overnight. He had a reception at the Eagle Tavern. He met with Red Jacket, the Seneca leader. Spent the night in Buffalo. We have actually a great marker on Lafayette Square. Here you go, in Buffalo. That is exactly the one you're seeing on screen right now. And we also have our YouTube documentary series, Follow the Frenchman, has an episode about Buffalo that also explores the visit to the community. So from Buffalo, the next day, June the 5th, Lafayette goes to Black Rock, which is now part of um, Buffalo, but at the time it wasn't. He got on the Erie Canal there in Black Rock. So the canal was not fully finished, formally unveiled by Dewey Clinton just yet, but it was about to be. But Lafayette got to use it before anybody else, if I may. So from Black Rock, he went to Tonawanda. And from there, he exited the canal and he got by land to Niagara Falls. So he went to see Niagara Falls on June the 5th, spent 30 minutes looking at the gravitas of the falls. We have a great marker at Goat Island, which was really tough to get because it's New York State property, but we worked with a great team of the park there to commemorate that stop, that the fact that Lafayette was an abolitionist and that it really tied in so well with the Underground Railroad narrative that they're having at Niagara Falls, very important one. So from Niagara Falls, he went to Lewiston town, a little north of Niagara Falls, and spent the night there. And then the next day on the 6th, he went through Lockport by land. And then at Lockport, he got on the canal again after ceremonies there. That's June the 6th. And he sailed on the canal overnight. So overnight and on the 7th in the morning in Rochester, New York, he arrived there on June the 7th in the morning, was received in Rochester as well. And then he exited the canal once again in Rochester, New York, and he went by land, as you pointed out, to Mendon, New York. It was June the 7th, 1825 as well. So we continue like that, and basically all the way to Syracuse through towns that we can mention afterward if you'd like. But he goes back on the canal in Syracuse again and continues his way eastern New York to be back on June the 17th to lay the cornerstone of the Bunker Hill Monument for the 50th anniversary of the battle.
So let's talk more about the first half of his leg in western New York, starting off with Dunkirk and Fredonia. He came over by land to that, right? Or okay, and then he went by boat from Fredonia to Buffalo.
From Dunkirk to Buffalo.
From Dunkirk. I'm sorry, Fredonia was a little my own New York State. Apologize for that, people out there. How was he received? Buffalo wasn't that big of a town, right? Back then, it was was it a city at that point? I can't remember.
No, so
I don't think so. Yeah.
So for that, I encourage you to watch the Follow the Frenchman episode that we did in Buffalo. We try to explore the history of the founding of Buffalo and how Lafayette's visit ties in with the development of the city. How he was received, well, there's really a ubiquitous theme around the country about how Lafayette was received. He was usually received as what you call now a rock star. There was really an outpouring of love and affection and activities that towns would just save no effort. They would save no energy to entertain Lafayette because he was such a great honor. And that to me is something that the American Revolution, necessarily focusing on the 13 original colonies and Lafayette's time during the war, does not necessarily give, is that this massive continental scale that the tour brings in. The tour brings Lafayette to the little towns. The tour brings Lafayette to the frontier at the time. The tour takes him on steamboats, and he goes to Kentucky, and he goes to Illinois, and he goes to see Andrew Jackson, that is at that time also rising in the polls. There's this very contentious presidential election in 1824, and Lafayette is in the middle of all of that to unite Americans. So to me, the tour has such a great potential because it's always the same theme. Arches erected, the streets were thronged with people. People entertained him. He dined. He had a supper. He slept. And this is a theme. You can see the adoration of the American people toward this French man, this Revolutionary War veteran. And that is certainly true in Western New York because I've been there recently. I've been there several times. And it's so clear how vivid the memory of his visit still is. And in many ways, in some towns, it's one of the most important events that they have in the town's history. The visit of Lafayette, the friend of Washington, the nation's guest that kept the country going at a time when Americans even themselves doubted that their experiment would become more than just an attempt, a short-lived attempt. So
Now,
that's his legacy, and it's very much alive in Western New York. I can tell you
just
that.
just to remind everyone, picture yourself in Western New York in 1824, 1825, as the rest of the nation is about to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence and the Revolutionary War. All the other sites along the eastern seaboard have actual battles, things like that that they can reference. Even the interior New York, upstate in the Northlands of New York, not much happened in Western New York. Yes, we had the Sullivan expedition, but it wasn't really there wasn't really a remarkable battle that occurred here, and you're kind of almost feeling left out. Yet Lafayette comes through and celebrates nonetheless. So that is the connection, at least within Western New York, to what happened 50 years earlier in the American Revolution. But it's actually a little bit more than that, because even though Western New York wasn't involved in the American Revolution, it certainly was involved in the War of 1812. And in fact, while Lafayette was in Buffalo, he toasted Lake Erie. I don't remember if it was him or his son, to be honest. But he toasted Lake Erie and the recent events there. So the Battle of Lake Erie being one of the battles of the War of 1812. Julien, when Lafayette went to Niagara Falls, did he go there as a tourist?
Uh, I don't think you could say that. I mean, tourist has such a modern connotation to it. I think it's really it's really the gravitas that captured his heart. You know, this is something he wanted to show Lafayette. There's a story reported by the secretary of Lafayette that the island was for sale, and that Lafayette said, "Oh, if I had the money, if I lived closer, maybe I would consider it." So it's very funny because now obviously it's a property of New York State. It's one of the jewels of the state parks. It attracts millions of people every year. And no, I don't think Lafayette necessarily could be categorized as a tourist, as I pointed out. But I think an honored, a guest of honor to whom you would want to show one of your most valuable natural wonders. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, and he does comment on that later when he goes to Lockport. But before we get to Lockport, let's go back to Buffalo and Black Rock. Remind the viewers the difference between the village of Buffalo at that time and this community of Black Rock and why he may have visited both of them.
Well, there is a big divide um, historically between Black Rock and Buffalo around the terminus of the western terminus of the Erie Canal, and these two communities fought like hell to win. So, I think it's a stretch to claim that Lafayette endorsed one by going to Black Rock, obviously, but um, now that you know that Black Rock is, I guess I'm going to call it a neighborhood or certainly a part of the city of Buffalo, history moved on. But at the time, the duality is not resolved. In fact, Black Rock had just built a pier. I think the word in English is a pier. Yes, that was quite long, and they pulled the boat that Lafayette would get on to enter the canal, and it's just very well described. And I think if you had somebody that would be from Black Rock and they would know the 1800s and what it meant for Black Rock at that time, I think it'd be really, really interested in finding out that Lafayette contributed to that little clash with Buffalo in that way. And yeah, to me, that was an interesting thing that I found. That's the kind of things I like, honestly, about this project that I've been doing is, yes, you talk about Lafayette. Yes, you see the outpouring of love about the American people to Lafayette, but you really learn a ton of things about the development of this country since the American Revolution, the divisions, the internal improvements, the Erie Canal. I get to develop an intimacy with the history of communities at such a local level. I'm from the south of France originally. Here I am talking about a duality between Black Rock and Buffalo. I just love that Lafayette brings me to that position. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Well, one final question before we break this part of the show. Lockport. So at Lockport, Lafayette goes from the natural wonder of Niagara Falls to the man-made natural wonder of the 5 steps of Lockport. Tell us a little bit. Do you have a story about Lockport involving Lafayette?
Well, I just can tell you this is an endorsement of the Erie Canal. Okay, it's the Western New York is getting to grow. It's becoming something. It's becoming massive because of the canal, and we think it's really important to emphasize the canal. In fact, we have a video of Follow the Frenchman about the whole canal development in Lafayette that was filmed in Syracuse, New York, that I encourage your viewers to watch. The canal is really the work of New York State, an investment in internal improvements that will help to consolidate intercommunications between the states. And think about the impact of the canal. Think about where all of this economy would have gone if it had grown at all without the canal. Maybe it would not have gone to the Eastern New York and benefited the growth of New York City as a hub that it is now. Maybe it would have gone out of the country through Canada, maybe down the St. Lawrence River. Maybe it would have gone down the Mississippi River and benefit New Orleans. Who knows? The thing is, the canal was made. Lafayette praised the canal for being a grand investment in the American project. And I think his visit, the fact that he came to New York State to take the canal as well, shows that he really wanted to make that commitment and that endorsement of something he thought was absolutely essential to the future prosperity of the United States.
All right. Well, thank you, Julian. And this concludes part one of this week's episode of the State of Greater Western New York Report. If you want to be a member of the live audience in the future, just go to stateof.greaterwesternnewyork.com. Sign up. It's free. And every Thursday morning, you'll get this secret private link to the studio, the virtual studio, where you could be a member of the live audience and ask our guests questions. If you're a member of the live audience for this particular episode and you want to stick around, we will be taping next week's episode immediately following this one, so you could watch that too to hear the rest of the story of Lafayette in the Greater Western New York region, and also maybe a little bit about his legacy. Julian, thanks for being a part of today's show, and we're looking forward to having you back again almost immediately. Everyone else, if you want to watch this, it's always archived. If you miss it because you work, just go to our website or like our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and the show is rebroadcast every Sunday at 1:30. So that's it for now. We'll see you all next week.